terrible.
So I like to get super
Okay.
concrete. And we've got a few slides. I don't want to overwhelm you with the slides, but I do want to kind of multimodal. I want to talk about it and give you some visuals to anchor to. We'll do that for maybe about 20 minutes. Again, we're going to go through pretty fast. If a question, aka attention, rises, feel free to just pop out and surface it. Feel free to ask. No worries there, and we'll have a little back and forth on that. And then as we bridge from the PowerShift ecosystem as a whole, we'll talk about specifically, as Christiana said, a couple of the entities that launched this year that have to do with entheogens. And we'll talk much more about that. It's a super juicy and very relevant and current topic. And so I definitely will want to talk quite a bit about that for 10, 15 minutes. Then we'll break out into smaller discussion groups where each of you will get to introduce yourself a bit, maybe have some dialogue. Christiana will set this up and come back to the broader whole. So it'll be interactive. It won't be just me speaking for the full 90 minutes. That would be totally boring. So just to lay down some of the basics, and then we'll begin from here. So I've been at this a long time. Most of you know me on this call. Entrepreneur by background, cross paths with Brian in 2006, and we launched a company called Holacracy One in 2007. So I've been at this game, which I now call power shifting things, for quite some time. And the first company was Holacracy One, of course, and that ran from 2007 for me through about 2014. And then I realized that, whoa, we've done some really good work swapping out one power system management hierarchy, but that work has just really only just begun. We have not addressed other places where power still exists in our organizational systems, like the legal and capital structure with shareholders, officers, directors, boards, voting rights, archaic things now, and those needed upgraded. And then in systems without bosses, right, where we have no managers leading people, with systems like holacracy, sociocracy, teal, and other practices, what the heck are we still doing with this construct called employee? Why are we still structuring labor under an employment agreement with an employer, an employee, a parent, and a child, a top and a bottom? Just crazy stuff. So in 2014, we launched encode.org to push the boundaries of self-organization and distributing authority to the endpoints. And this is the company that Christiana, Peter, and I co-founded in 2014. And we've been doing quite a bit of work there, again, that I'll talk about. So many, many years. It's amazing how fast time flies, as we all know. So 15 years at this PowerShift self-organization game. And another long-running practice of mine that's relevant, even longer, at meditation. And I'm going to talk about this in the second part, and how that practice, meditation, contemplation, mindfulness, prayer, reflection, goes by many, 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 many names, all of them great. It has been a key component on my journey. And I'm going to talk much more about that. That, for me, started in my 20s. So I have been at meditation and mindfulness practices for a very long time, and it's super relevant from my experience to entheogens as a catalytic experience. So I'm going to anchor back to that. So with that set up, I'll share my screen and we'll take a look here. Let's see. Where is, there we go. I believe that's it. And I believe that should be a full screen for everybody.
Yep.
All right. So here we are on the third. And well, one thing I want to start with, and this is, I really make this point, we've all been around the block for a few years, right? We've all been exposed to practices that promise to change things. Incremental tools and techniques, clever systems that try to make organizational life better. And in my experience over the years, I have found that most of those, while super valuable in their own right, when they go back into the same power structure, they wither away and die. So things like high performance teams, leadership development, total quality management, lean processes, just-in-time inventory, all these things that we try to do to change organizational life mostly has gone back into the same power system and failed. But PowerShift is different. We take a different approach, and this is the approach that Holacracy 1 first kind of pioneered, I think, in a set of rules. So in one sentence, it's different. I'm going to give you in one sentence, PowerShift means something. It's not just a fancy word. It's not a made up term. I'm not trying to sell you anything. Oh my God. I haven't sold any of this stuff in like 15 years. This is a pull process. You got to be ready for it. It's a big deal. It really is fundamentally shifting structures that most of us just take for granted. So PowerShift means shifting power from a collection of people to a collection of rules. So no longer is power fused to a power holder systemically. Power is distributed through a collection of rules that everybody plays by. It's an interesting orthogonal relationship. The organization is playing by a set of rules that encodes a deep hierarchy of purpose. Us as individuals are in relationship to that. So power is distributed organizationally through a set of rules. Power is not held individually or egoically by a power holder, a boss, or an authority figure. So it changes the dynamics there quite a bit. This is key. Encode, where encode gets its name, it is encoding the power shift in the organizational space, in the legal and capital space, in the labor space, and others to create a set of rules to make this concrete instead of just aspirational. And so this is a big shift. And when you do that, these things happen. So how different? In 6 statements. In a power shifted organizational system, no one is privileged. There are no special cases. It's one of those crazy things where everybody's special and unique, bringing talents, gifts, and energy, and no one's special or privileged over the other. It's a beautiful integration. So there are no special cases. You can't show up as the founder, as the biggest shareholder, as the most expert in your craft and wield power from there. You're playing by a set of rules that distributes power. And that means no one is going to empower you, which is huge too. In our classic organizational systems, we actually enculturate this. We have whole programs of empowerment where we tell leaders that they need to empower their employees. And while that sounds great on the surface, and it certainly is well intended, it bakes in and systemically encodes parent-child and dependencies. And if you're dependent on somebody else to empower you, oh my God, what about your own agency, your own power, your own voice, right? And so in these systems, no one's going to empower you. It sounds almost like I'm going to get canceled, right? By making that claim. I want to be in a system where nobody empowers me, comma, the next part's important, where I get to be empowered by leading my work. Empowerment is systemic. And in a for-purpose endeavor or for-purpose enterprise, there are no employees. So there are no underprivileged classes, right? So there are no classes. Everyone is an investor. It's really interesting. We redefined the term investor even to include everything, all contributions to purpose, not just money. That's a privilege, right? Everybody thinks of investor and immediately goes to capital, paid in capital, and that's the power holder, right? No, everybody invests time, energy, talent, ideas, creativity, their attention, right? Getting out of bed in the morning, leaving your family, your spouse, your partner, your dog, and giving some of that attention to a purpose greater than yourself, that is absolutely an investment. And so it is different. We are really changing some fundamental, almost habitually held, never examined beliefs about what an organization is. And in the system further, there are no salaries. So salaries are almost entitlement programs that have just gone crazy with complexity and tiering and status and all sorts of counterproductive things. So in this, earnings are based on a return on your contribution towards purpose. And then how we decide where authority lies, the seat of authority, if you will, is something called due governance. And this is something that Holacracy brought to the table with a really deep decision-making and governance system. In fact, that's how Holacracy started, as a self-governing system, a decision-making system. So in a for-purpose endeavor, decisions are made through a very specific, a very detailed decision-making process that everybody plays equally in. And then, since we've gotten rid of bosses, purpose is the only boss, which is fascinating. So when you do this, several emergent qualities appear. All the things that we've been searching for, but getting to them differently. So a different means to an end. By changing the fundamental structures, collection of rules, all those things that I just said shift, we get these benefits. And if you're interested in learning more about those, you can go to encode.org's website. It just refreshed, and it has a little bit of detail on each one of these. Obviously, empowerment, right? We want empowerment. We want everybody to be empowered, but from the inside out. We want the organization to be empowered to pursue its purpose without noise or being co-opted by a personal power holder's preference, right? And so it goes. We want a high degree of transparency and accountability and flexibility and autonomy. Each one of these gets broken down, and these are the key benefits of shifting power. This is why I'm still so passionate about this. I think we have found a way, not just us, many people over many decades, even predating Holacracy 1 with Sociocracy and some of the early pioneers with Gore and Morningstar and others. This has been in the field for a very long time. And there's been a lot of experimentation, but I believe we're near a tipping point with so many things coming together to make this a reality, to create a power-shifted ecosystem where everybody is playing by these rules and we get these emergent properties. So again, I'm going super fast just to give you kind of a lay of the land. Each one of these are worthy of a topic on their own. I've discovered, along with Christiana, Peter, and many others, that there are 5 ingredients that you really need to cook with in order to encode a power-shifted system. These are the very same ingredients that Holacracy 1 cooked with when creating the Holacracy Constitution. And it's interesting. We have people in other practices with other techniques here, and there are these foundational elements or ingredients are found in all kinds of systems, like getting things done, for example, and other systems that are already intuitively or natively power shifted. So purpose, everything hangs on purpose in the system. As I said, purpose is the new boss, if you will. Structure, we have a deep structure. You might have heard me say that we have this orthogonal relationship. It's a misnomer, it's a misconception that when deploying self-organization, like sociocracy, holacracy, or teal practices, your objective is to get to a flat organization. No. Nature does not organize flat. Nature organizes in a natural hierarchy, with the term holarchy to point to that, a natural hierarchy of increasing wholeness. The body is that, natural systems are that, complex adaptive systems are naturally structured. So we want a different type of structure, just not a top-down, bottom-up pyramid, right? A different structure. So that's super important. In a system that is self-organized, we want to inculcate a deep sense of awareness of self and other. What you need, your needs, in relationship to what the organization, its needs. And being much more focused on present moment awareness. What's needed now to get to next. It's always a now, next game. Having a deep sense of what's needed now is a capacity that really helps to play this game. Agency, one of my favorites, since we have no bosses and empowerment comes from the inside out. When you're in this system, it is super clear when you're in a role or you have a position to do work, it's you that have the authority to lead that work. So a self-organized system or a power-shifted system instills a high degree of agency or sovereignty over your work. You're not seeking permission or consensus from others. You're able to lead your work unencumbered with a high degree of agency. And one of my favorites is clarity, which is a pointer to two things that are important. Inside visibility, we want to make things, inside transparency, we want to make things as transparent as possible, as much transparency as you can stomach in these systems. And a good example of that is open book management or transparent salary or earning structures. We want everything to be visible, right? And visibility is pointing at the horizon. How far out can we see? How much visibility do we actually have? So these 5 things, again, we're not going to linger on them, but just to kind of sketch the framework, these 5 capacities are needed to be a good practitioner in a self-organizing system. And I'm going to anchor to these when we talk about entheogens. How do we develop these capacities? So a couple quick things before we bridge into the ecosystem itself is it's with awareness allows us to play the game of differentiation and integration. And those of you with an integral theory background or a developmental background know this is the game that humans play all the time as we develop and develop capacities to take on broader or different perspectives. It gives us the ability to tease things apart and put them back together at greater levels of complexity or greater embraces of wholeness. And so this is part of the dance that gets encoded too in a power shifted system. We differentiate context first with rules, concrete definitions, and then we have the opportunity to reintegrate them. So some quick visuals that are just fun. Whenever I see a conventional organization now, I see this. I see this conflation of all the things that get talked about as important, like shareholder value and organizational culture and operational efficiency and clarity of job function. And it's just all in this ball of complexity entangled. There's very little differentiation in any of the power structures, or how do we decide the differences, or when there's a competing interest. They get done. Conventional organizations have done amazing things on the planet. We have our iPhones and SpaceX and Tesla and amazing companies. But to scale, to grow, to be healthy humans inside our organizational systems, we need differentiation. To break out the component parts so that we can see them clarity, right? And then reintegrate into a broader whole to create a tapestry of something brand new or emergent. This is also a quality of complex adaptive systems. It's got always at the edge of chaos, always at the edge of things coming unwound. That ball of wind or that sweater kind of just unraveling and falling apart. But in the process, emergent opportunities occur. So this is just another key element of things to pay attention to in a power shifted system. It's dependent on our capacities to see, differentiate, and integrate perspectives over time. And then finally, contexts. So in an organizational system that is power shifted, we can now see clearly 3 different contexts. We separate those out. And this has been Encode's work over the last many, many years, is taking the operating system or the operational system like sociocracy and holacracy, and then pushing self-organization to the end point. To take those same principles, purpose, structure, awareness, right, agency, and encode them in new legal structures. So Encode has created multiple new legal structures that are valid in multiple jurisdictions around the world. So we have a limited liability structure in the states that has been completely rewritten, valid in Washington State, Colorado, Nevada, not-for-profit in Texas, and a really cool one, the Wyoming DAO LLC, which incorporates blockchain and smart contract stuff. So we have rewritten the legal rules to encode for purpose. And as a concrete example, in a for-purpose enterprise, the fiduciary, which is a legal term for greater care or concern, is not to the shareholder like it is in a for-profit, but it is to purpose. So there's legal standing and legal ground that decisions must anchor back to purpose. That's the boss. That's what we're serving. And then practices like sociocracy and holacracy bring us our work operations, our operational practices. And then Encode also has pioneered creating a set of rules for us people, the culture. And this has been a little pet peeve of mine when people talk about organizational culture. I know what they're talking about, of course, and culture is absolutely important, but I believe it's a conflation, mistaking organizational culture really for people culture. And so what Encode has done is created a set of rules specifically designed for humans to encode behavior and cultural norms by and between the humans, creating a different context for the people and the people's culture, which is pretty amazing. So these things come together in what Encode calls a for-purpose enterprise: legal, capital, people culture, and operations, all with clear agreements. And this changes the game completely. And we've been doing this for a number of years, as most of you know. Some of you are exploring adopting for-purpose enterprise legal structures that push the boundaries on power, as we talked about, to the endpoints. And so this started in 2014, and Encode has been living in this experiment for quite some time. And we have been busy in the last 3 or 4 years launching new companies that embrace these principles to create an ecosystem of companies. So what if we just use this to follow evolutionary tensions? I would get asked all the time, for example, how do you find venture capital for these kind of purpose endeavors, right? How do you deal with labor issues like social safety net, insurance programs, medical benefits, mentoring, professional development? How do you deal with issues related to travel and personal and professional development? And so what we did, we started launching companies to address this, creating a whole ecosystem here in the middle, these core companies. You can see Encode up here at the top. I'll blow this up a bit so you can see it. So we've created an ecosystem of companies. Encode, Just.work deals with labor. World Without Employees is a not-for-profit. And we're going to talk about these two, the Entheo-related ones, next. So an ecosystem is developing, one on real estate and capital. And then these are embedded in relationship to a bunch of others. The PowerShifters, whoops, let me escape from that. And various companies, including law firms. We're working with different law firms to bring their expertise in these kind of legal structures and so on. And then there are a whole host of communities out on the outer ring. We have Joshua Harbrick here from Loci, and Loki, I'm sorry, damn, I missed that, from Loki, and others that you're probably aware of. So there is a emerging community, an ecosystem of people who are really interested in pushing these boundaries. And this has been true for quite some time, of course. So this is the PowerShift ecosystem, right? Power-shifted companies pursuing purposes that their members care about, trying to push those purposes into the world. And two of the companies that we have focused on this year are Entheogen related. And Entheogens, I claim, are a catalyst for the power shift. And I believe this is a tipping point. This might be one of the key ingredients needed to unwind the Gordian knot, if you will, of how to get individuals oriented to their own purpose, their own power and voice, their own sense of agency, right? the ability to be comfortable standing in uncertainty, not knowing, and having not knowing be a thing to be pursued as a space for emergent qualities and emergent opportunities to appear. And on it goes. So we see entheogens as a catalyst for what's needed to help usher in a new era of power shifted work and power shifted relationships. And I say this because of my own experience. I'm going to go back to my meditation practice. I'm sure you've probably been asked by friends and family or others, maybe in your own life, maybe what's the single most important or amazing thing that you've learned in your life? What aha moment understanding changed everything for you? And there are a lot of great answers to that, of course. One answer for me was meditation practice, because what it actually unlocked for me was amazing. And I started my meditation practice, as I said, in my 20s, and I've tried all flavors and varieties. And I have some favorites, but there are many, many ways to develop mindfulness. And I would put to you that this was what helped me orient to the power shift long ago, 15 years ago. It's what helped me get super comfortable with not knowing and unlearning and figuring things out and understanding the difference between my needs and the organization's needs. And I've been doing this a long time, and the others have been doing this a long time too. There are millions of folks hungry for self-organization and power shift. I know this because I'm connected to many of the thought leaders in this space. For example, Fred Lelou and I go way back when he was doing research in his book. And he has sold 1 million copies of Reinventing, right? Their brave new work, my friend Aaron Dignan published a book a few years ago talking about all the ingredients needed to run your own self-organizing experiments. Many, many hundreds of thousands of copies of books and practices, the sociocracy movement, the teal movement, holacracy, of course. There are millions of people hungry to work this way. But we have been we've been really struggling with helping to orient people to the ego shifts that need to happen, the surrender that needs to happen, the unlearn. We're in the classic adult human conundrum of changing inertia, changing beliefs, changing behaviors. And so we need a catalyst. Now, we could prescribe professional development. That can work, but it's slow. We could prescribe therapy. That absolutely works, but it's slow. We could prescribe meditation, and of course that works, but it is slow. It takes years of practice. And what we're putting forth here is that entheogens are actually now a catalyst to get us what we need. And I've summarized this in three different bullet points, and then I'm going to turn it over to Christiana to do our breakout groups. Three things come to mind. Mind the gap. It's my favorite. When people talk to me about how I define meditation, for me, it is simply the gap between what is arising in my awareness and my response to it. So thoughts and feelings become objects in my awareness that I now get the opportunity to decide how to engage. Amazing, life-changing. When you can break open that gap and cultivate that gap, you now have more agency, more power to choose your response capacities when life throws you a curve or life grants you a wonderful blessing or whatever the case may be. The other is research now in the area of psychedelics are finding that through entheogens or consuming psychedelics in ritual and with the right set and setting, you are dropping the default mode network noise. Your meaning-making system begins to quiet down. And as that meaning-making system quiets down, space arrives, spaciousness. And you'll hear the masters, the gurus, the thought leaders. You have Eckhart Tolle talking about the power of now, the spaciousness of quiet, right? These are what the sages have been pointing to. And with an entheogenic experience and your default mode network, things go quiet but awareness remains. And embracing that void gives you a whole different perspective on yourself, others, and what's possible. And then finally, flipping the script is a very interesting one, getting a lot of attention, especially in the mental health field, where entheogens and psychedelics are being used for a lot of mental health issues, including post-traumatic stress, depression, and so on. And the research is quite fascinating. By resetting your prior experience, you're able to open up a new way of interpreting or reframing your current experience. And this has been known for quite some time, how humans learn or encode beliefs is through this Bayesian algorithm of looking at what happened before and looking at what signals are coming in next, and then reevaluating, do I want to change my belief system? And with entheogens and psychedelics, they're finding what actually happens is during these journeys, your prior experiences have less weight in your decision making and belief forming processes, which gives you a way to rapidly begin to readdress what happened in a different and more positive or healthy frame. This is exactly what gets unwind in post-traumatic stress release, I think, and many of the researchers are starting to point to, that entheogens, they're a pathway for plasticity, to rethink, rewire neuroplasticity as a key element of entheogenic experiences as well. So this is why it's a big deal. It's such a big deal that we formed two companies. Entheo Work is all about reclaiming the sacredness of work. It is a not-for-profit community organization where we conduct entheogenic rituals as a community to explore our own purpose and our own sense of agency, to explore where we might be blocked or constrained, to support one another in reclaiming our notion of work as being sacred for us, really redefining and broadening what work is. Work is caring for an elderly parent, raising a child, creating a piece of art, doing research, writing AI prompts, I don't know, whatever it may be. It's all part of your gift that you're offering the world. And Entheo Work is an organization. You can learn more about it at the website there. But it is about community, connection, and a direct experience with the divine. No more intermediary power holders, just you and the divine, right? And the next one, PowerShift Journeys, a little bit more businessy focus, is to address what is kind of ailing us in the corporate environment. It's kind of like psychedelic assisted professional development. We've all heard of psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, right? Which is great, but this is psychedelic assisted professional development. And so PowerShift Journeys is putting on workshops, retreats for executives to bring them in, have ceremonies to awaken and renew and align to the power shift. And then finally, just from a businessy standpoint, PowerShift Journeys helps folks embrace those 5 principles, those 5 shifts, right? So how is it that everyone's empowered? That's like quite an ego shock when you're used to having authority, and maybe you have no more or less authority than somebody that you have been mentoring, even maybe, or certainly directing, or thinking that you were empowering them. This sometimes can be quite a shock to the ego. And so we want to help people orient to a new way of showing up as leaders, leading their work, and letting other people lead their work, and both folks following in the process. So this kind of sets the stage. What is PowerShift? A collection of rules. We're no longer encoding power being held by people. It bakes in these 5 ingredients: purpose, structure, awareness, agency, clarity, and creates new contexts that we can play in, where we all play together by the same set of rules. And now we're adding in entheogens as a catalyst to help us orient to our own purpose, our own boundary relationships, one might call structure, and so on. And so this is what Up With Us, the PowerShift ecosystem series being put on by Christiana here. We have these other companies. We'll be talking about one of the other ones next time. And we'll probably do a deeper dive on the PowerShift itself and talk about the characteristics and how to become one of these things, or how you might already be doing this in your own organizations. And so with that, hopefully it triggered some questions or some tensions, as we said, and we can move into some breakout groups and see if that surfaces anything to discuss.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tom. And again, listening, it's like every 5 minutes, everything that you covered, I know is at some point going to be a separate session of the PowerShift series because there's so much more to dive into. And I'm super looking forward to that. And of course, now, very, very curious. Would you mind stopping the screen sharing for now, Tom, please? Thank you. So we're going to send you off into breakout groups. Super curious to hear what triggered some tensions, maybe. What did you like specifically? And of course, questions. Please bring back questions. We will have enough time to dive into those questions. We're going to send you into the breakout groups for 10 minutes. So please, I hope you can find that's enough time, and breakout groups always are too short. And in the end, they interrupt you in your conversation. So apologies for that, but there's just, we would like to have then a lot of time to dive into the questions. So enjoy your conversations and bring back as many questions as you possibly can. Let me go and send you out. And Jonah, I'm going to assign you to, I don't know, any one room. And off you go. All right. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a good time, and I hope 10 minutes were enough. And of course, there's always time to continue here. We really have plenty of time. So please, because we're not so many, I think we can save us from putting questions into the chat box, but much rather either just wave or raise your hand with the icon. And I'm sure I'll try and follow the sequence, but I'm sure we'll manage. So over to you. Stage is open for your questions.
So what is it about the fair purpose enterprise? Can you explain it to me from zero? I'm kidding.
All right. So, okay, right. Holly, thank you. Over to you.
Yeah, I'm so fascinated by this whole topic and so delighted to be here. Thank you for the overview. What comes to mind is probably some level of similarity to what the EOS operating system has created for businesses, with of course, lots of differentiation. And I'm curious if you could speak to how it differs, because I want to immediately start referring to some of my clients, and it would be helpful for me to have a slightly better orientation too.
Yeah. Happy to. Thanks, Holly, for the question. That hits really close to home. It really brings in some of my management consultancy roots. So I've been playing in operational systems for a super long period of time, trying to create make operational improvements with all kinds of interesting techniques. Like I mentioned several of them: lean manufacturing, the entrepreneurial operating system, right, is one. There are a lot of folks functional organization design. There are many design, operational design techniques. Joshua Harbrink is on. He has a very strong operational focus. He could probably list a dozen more. And as I put them in the category, not as a disparagement. I'm not pushing against them, but I put them in the clever technique category. They are clever and they have benefit, right? They have value baked into them, all of them, really. The tricky part is when you try to power shift, because all of those systems, unless they're running with sociocracy or holacracy, have a management hierarchy. They have a top and they bottom, and they have a power holder that distributes her or his power relationally, mostly. And we all have bad days. And what happens when the boss has a bad day or doesn't like someone or, and it doesn't systemically change the power structure? They're beautiful techniques. And I would see over time the for-purpose enterprise being able to have plug and play modules with EOS and functional mapping and many others that plug in and then anchor to the fundamental power shifts that play to encode, much like an API or a connector. We all have experiences of connecting your productivity app to your CRM system or whatever the case may be. So I do think that's the trend. It's not that I would push against any of them. EOS is actually quite an interesting one for sure. It's very rich in measurements and metrics and clarity. So it embraces clarity really, really well, right? And that's also common. You'll find these techniques are really strong in purpose, but really lacking in agency, or really strong in clarity, but all upside down in my mind on structure. They have a top, they have a bottom, they have a pyramid, they have teams, they have cross-functional dot matrix, craziness. So that's how I think of a lot of the category of EOS. Clever techniques, but fail when you try to power shift them.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Polly. Happy to dive deeper. All right. Okay. I see your hand up again, Holly. That's fine. There were no other hands up. So please.
I'm fascinated.
You go ahead.
So I'm listening to this and thinking developmentally. My background is human and organizational development, as I'm sure yours is, and also recognizing there's a so holacracy, sociocracy were born of a particular stage of development in which equity, parallel distribution, are the most significant elements of that emergent stage. Then there is a stage or many stages beyond that in which some level of prioritization become more apparent when most of the group whose center of gravity is that later stage. And so I don't know if that makes any sense to you, if follow or even aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so curious how this works for groups, organizations, collectives that are at that later stage, because that's what I've seen in the literature and know of practitioners. That's where holacracy and sociocracy fall apart. Is it works at a particular stage and then it doesn't work so well at later stages. And so it's less about power and more about creating systems that allow a prioritization within the systems. And maybe you address that. I'm just kind of curious. I'm like a big question for me.
Yeah, it is a big question. And it's one that comes up quite often, especially when you try to systemically encode things. You want the system to be as embracive as possible, both typologically, psychological type, and developmentally. And as an example, holacracy, we spent a lot of time road testing with some of the leading developmental psychologists, research psychologists, and psychological type to test for meeting all types and developmental stages. So everybody can find their space, their voice in a system that allows everyone to participate at whatever capacity they can bring to purpose. It's actually one of my pet peeves. I have found over all these years that systems like Holacracy will embrace anyone that is bringing energy towards a purpose that they care about. And it follows this paradigm of we write the rules and then the rules rewrite us. It is a very bi-directional kind of thing. When everybody is playing by the same set of rules, that encourages individuals to contribute their capacities, their gifts, their talent, their time to a purpose they care about, then everybody can play at whatever level that they are engaging in the system at. What's weird is the humans then start projecting. It's the humans that are rejecting the system itself and having a value judgment about an individual's contribution that, quote, should be different than it actually is. And this is crazy making. So this just perpetuates some systemic power projections that are in our old system that go unnoticed, and they become visible. One of the things that happens when you implement a system like Holacracy or Sociocracy is it turns the lights on. With clarity, there's no place to hide on either side of that, either being projected upon or the one doing the projecting. And it becomes much easier to see. All we're judging, and it's not the we even, the system itself, all the system is evaluating is contribution to purpose. It's not trying to develop people. This is another one of my pet peeves, that a lot of folks take development as a leverage point, and it certainly is in a conventional system. What else are you going to do? You want to develop people's capacities to take more and broader perspectives, to be somehow different than they are. That actually sounds obscene to me today. Like I have expletives that should show up here, but I'll restrain myself. What right does the organization have to think that it can or should develop me? Seriously, WTF. I get the opportunity to develop by doing work that I care about and engaging with others who are doing work that they care about. And in that's how we naturally develop. That's where our developmental edge comes from, is being tensioned or frictioned or supported by other humans that are doing purposeful work. It doesn't come from the organization. So psychological type, personal preferences, capacities. Christine's on the line here. I can see her lighting up. She has deep background in skills and capacities, and there are many lenses and models to help apply this. She brings some really great ones. And so there are a lot of folks like on this call and elsewhere who are paying attention to this. And this is kind of where we need to upgrade or translate our tools and techniques and lenses to be in a different power shifted system. This is where the opportunity is. What we've been doing over the last many years, it's another one of my pet peeves, I'm full of them, is down translating. So we down translate really amazing models and lenses, developmental models, psychological type, capacity models. We down translate them into old power systems, because what else are we going to do? And a lot of the goodness and value is lost. So I say, let's up translate. Let's improve our game to a new power system, redesign to a different power system. And that addresses the problem. Rarely do I see in a system that's well designed, people being projected on by the system or rejected for some developmental capacity. I think that's nonsense.
Still have a lot of
Great.
Well, Holly, maybe we'll have the opportunity for personal sharing sometime soon. Who knows? All right. Holly, keep going if there's nobody else, but asking. Yep, Joshua, please.
So the systems and the organization and everything, as we design these things, we were kind of speaking about this in our breakout session. there is, of course, an element of taking people who are established in their fields, professions, and cracking that shell, breaking the veneer to even start to open minds to adopt this. And at this point, we probably have, people here have already been exposed, and so we're kind of on this path, or we're at various levels along the path towards this shift. And so I'm particularly curious about, I think I've spoken with you a little bit about this, Tom. How do we crack that little veneer? How do we break that, burst that bubble enough to help people who are not even on the path yet, who can really contribute and participate, start to enter that?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite questions. It really has my attention. In a lot of ways, Josh, it's what gave rise to Entheo work and PowerShift journeys. I've been doing the meditation thing, like I said, for a long time. It's boring, it's powerful, it's transformational, but the resurgence of psychedelics and psychedelic journeys, what attracted me to that late in my years. I only just recently added back psychedelics because I would hear people having entheogenic journeys and experiences that would mimic my meditative experiences. And it's like, once you have a glimpse of not being isolated, being connected to everything, the drop of boundaries, the sense of the sacredness of all things, and your contribution, your voice, you can't unsee that. And I think this is what's needed, especially generational shifts. I find myself focusing on 20, 30 somethings, quite frankly. There's a lot less unlearning to do. And also, quite frankly, I think the 20, 30 somethings simply just won't put up with the dysfunction that's in our current organizational system. We already see, what's quitting in place, right? The silent rebellions, the acting out, because what else are you going to do? Let's change that energy. Instead of being passive aggressive, let's channel it into active. And I think entheogenic experiences is a catalyst, as this session is all about, for power shifting, stepping into your own agency and power, and hanging out with others who are doing that too. I think it's a critical piece. Joshua was at our session in Austin a few months back. We're coupling entheogenic experiences, the classic journey experience, usually an overnight, you've probably all had these, with a follow-up co-working time. So non-entheogenic time to hang out with the very people that you journeyed with and talk about your work and your passions and where you're stuck and what hurts and how to get help. And I think this is the new professional development path. As I said, there's psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. Awesome. I want psychedelic assisted professional development. Damn it.
Is it? Can I jump in here?
Go ahead. Christine,
I am
please.
just over the moon excited to be talking about psychedelic assisted professional development. I was telling Jonathan and Licia, but I'm literally wearing this fantastic fungi t-shirt today. My life was personally transformed, and I see more and more how those experiences now inform the way that I guide people and coach people, and the way that I see organizations as living, breathing systems. And it's just so exciting. And I've been curious just at the reception, if there is kind of a resurgence and a lot of new information out there, and I'm curious just how people are receiving it.
Yeah, it's a little tricky still, honestly. We're still benefiting and suffering from the 60s and 70s, right? So there's that connotation, that overlay. And for myself, I still have the stigma of entheogens as drugs, with that weird label of everything that's not big pharma is somehow bad. This is craziness, right? And so then you go back into the corporate environment that is so worried about offending anybody or stepping on toes or any of the things. I'm not disparaging any of that at all. I'm just saying that the landscape is tricky, especially when introducing something so edgy. and people don't know, they don't know what ground to stand on. And then there are the laws, there are the legalities, which are true, straight up, right? And so we're all trying to navigate these. Entheo Work is a registered faith-based religious organization, more about community than that. But what that buys us is the right to do our work, mostly unencumbered from the regulators, right? So we have the right to dispense the entheogens that catalyze the experiences our community desires. And so we did that on purpose. We spent a lot of time and energy and money, quite frankly, to structure it so that we can, then a business move is Entheo Work is the outsourced service provider to PowerShift Journeys. PowerShift Journeys is marketing to corporations, and it's easy. You know, we're a for-profit DAO LLC, PowerShift Journeys is, and we're running executive retreats, and we're doing leadership development. You saw that little slide, helping to transform leaders into the next PowerShifted. The language changes completely, right? But then people get to have the experience.
It's just so exciting. It's very, very exciting.
All right. Thank you. Anybody else? More questions?
All right. I just wanted to say, sorry, I was a bit
Hi.
late to the party. I think it was a time zone thing. You know, I'm in the Netherlands, so it's like
Welcome.
Oh,
I don't know. Google messed up here, but you know, interesting topics. Yeah, I missed most of it, so I don't feel I can really contribute in this case because I missed pretty much the whole session, I think. Right? The only
But
thing
you are-
I wanted to, yeah,
Go ahead.
the only thing I wanted to put out there, I think, you know, in terms of, and maybe this was already touched upon, right? I think to actually make things like holacracy, etc., you know, new hierarchies or new methodologies, basically, the opposite to hierarchy work. The people part, right? The emotional intelligence part, I think, is very much something that is very constricting us of making it work. You know, so when people do not have a lot of emotional intelligence, and of course, you know, psychedelics could maybe help with that part, but I think they're more prone to being influenced. They're more prone to actually sticking with the old, you know, Neanderthal version of running the show. So, and you know, like I said, right, whether it be psychedelics or whether it be just, you know, psychiatric help or you know supporting, you know, anything on that part, I think it would contribute in not falling prey to the old system. Basically. That's just what I
Yeah.
Mm.
It's a great ad. Actually, you're giving voice to one of the tensions that launched Encode, because most of these systems, sociocracy and holacracy included, they don't have a good answer for the people, nor were they designed for that. But I was there. I helped. The design criteria was the opposite. It was to differentiate. It was to separate organization so we could have a clear set of rules that served a purpose, not any people. We moved people out, which gave all of us the opportunity then to address the people separately. And this is what Encode has done. It created a context for the people to deal with behavior norms, cultural norms, tensions between humans, not work tensions. We already have a process for that. You're spot on. This is one of the, and when you're still an employee fused in an organizational system that is maybe self-organized and power shifted operationally, but you still have that conflation, that overlap. And this is a real problem. We just helped one of our clients in the US, long-term holacracy practitioner, struggling with the very point you're making. Michelle, is it? Michelle?
Yeah, Michelle.
And so it's one of the reasons people come to Encode is to address these tensions. It's like, awesome, we love self-organization operationally. We hate that we have a board and shareholders and employees. Like, what? This is
you got to
so
work with them.
We do, until you can change it. And this is what you did miss. What Encode has done, it's rewritten the rules to create legitimate legal structures and labor structures that replace old school structures.
Okay.
So the for-purpose enterprise addresses this problem. That's why I said you just gave voice to one of the key tensions that caused me, Christiana, and others, Peter, to launch Encode. We need rules for the people, and holacracy is not it. It's a bad idea to govern people with holacracy. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
I don't know. My organization practices holacracy. And like I said, pretty much the only bottleneck that I'm seeing, because everybody knows to be self-steering and mechanically self-sufficient. It's just a part where you need to change behavior, indeed, and the person part comes up. That a lot of times they go and fall back on, right? Because
true. And back to the evolving system, kind of to Holly's point, holacracy started in 2007, 6, earlier with Brian and Ternary, but it's evolving. And so one of the things, if you're practicing holacracy Constitution 5.0, there's now a hook called relational agreements that allow you to bridge in much more clearly, so that there's a relationship between the people, calling that out as a distinction, and the organization. It's not quite where Encode has taken it, but it's a nice next incremental step in holacracy 5 that wasn't there in 4.1.
Yeah, now that they definitely are evolving and are also looking at the human factor, but for organizations that already have been trying it out, holacracy, I feel that it's a bit little too late, sort of,
Yeah, I do know. Yeah.
Behavior.
I would like to add something there, because like Tom, you just said, holacracy is not a good way to navigate the people context, which is what gave rise to or one of the major tensions that gave rise to encode.org. And I would even take that a little bit further with the experiences around the PowerShift. That is what gave rise to Entheogens and PowerShift journeys again, because the falling back into, I want the organization to take care of me, that is so baked into, such deeply baked into every system that we grew up with and are still growing up with in school, sports clubs, in our businesses and everything. It is we just hit the boundaries of our mindset so often when we're now invited to step into a collective with a whole different level of agency, surrendering to the collective, but being responsible for the collective. Because you don't say you take care of me, we take care of each other, and everything that Tom spoke to. And I think that is one of the really exciting aspects of working with Entheogens and the way we do with Entheo work and PowerShift journeys.
Okay. I should have been here at the beginning, I think.
Well, please come back. So you're going to receive the recording, and we're gonna do more of these. So please come back. So we're coming to the end of our time, and let me just share just a couple of slides with you to point towards. Wait a minute, where is it? There, here it is. So in November, we are going to offer the next Power and Purpose program from PowerShift Journeys. Please, you're going to receive those slides. Go to the website. The dates are not yet up on the website, but we have those dates. November 16th to 20th, we're going to start in person. And then, of course, this follows up over the following month with integration and mentorship. And the location will be most probably somewhere in the Austin area. So if you're interested, please put that in your calendar, and you will be certainly kept up to date. And then also for your calendar is our next PowerShift ecosystem series, which is going to be on PowerShift Capital, one of the PowerShift ecosystems organizations, and with the title of PowerShift Capital, the Purpose Equity Fund. Tom, you want to say a few words to that?
Just the briefest of them. And it's one that I'm really super excited about, applying PowerShift to old structures that are still needed, like venture capital. So PowerShift Capital is rewriting the rules, go figure, on private equity. So it is raising capital from investors without the classic 220 structure, without a general partner managing other limited partners' money, which allows us to do some pretty amazing things as an investment fund. So we're tokenizing the investment fund. It will be run more as an investment club. And you might expect, because it's power shifted, purpose reigns primary. Everything's about purposeful investing. So much to share about that. Super excited, working with some great attorneys to make this real.
Thanks, Tom. So September 5th, and I will send that out as well, or you've got it on the slides when you get those. All right, Tom, thank you so much. You want to say a few closing and goodbye words before I close it finally?
I am mostly good, mostly just honored to hang out with really cool people and talk about things that I love, with feeling the resonance with you all on things that you love too. And I think it's these smaller groups getting bigger, bringing more of this into the world that will make the difference. So it's been fun hanging out with you all. Look forward to the next.
Thanks a lot, Tom. Yeah, so for me, please let us know whether you enjoyed this session. What can we do better? What did you like particularly? And come back next times. We will keep you informed, and really very much looking forward to that. And again, like I said before, the many topics that we touched on today, each of those I am quite sure eventually are going to turn into a more in-depth. This was the kickoff of the series, which is really quite exciting. So thanks a lot. Thanks for your comments, and see you again next time. All righty.
See you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yep.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.